True Sangheili, An Elite's Tale by Wolverfrog49. Chapter 1. Prologue. Edict of the Most High Prophet of Truth, Ninth Age of Reclamation. By the authority of the noble prophets of truth, regret, and mercy, henceforth, any and all battle-worthy Sangheili are to be transferred from any idle post in high charity, and any covenant-held world or ship, into active combat. Those amongst the excused are the honor guard, the counselors, the mentally ill, physically unfit, and the old. Female Sangheili are, as always, prohibited from taking part in any military action. Any Sangheili engaged in a guard post, other than the honor guard, will be replaced by the Jiralhanai until such a time as the High Council deems otherwise. Any Jiralhanai in question of where they now stand shall direct all inquiries to Tartarus, chieftain of the Jiralhanai. Failure to adhere to this edict will result in death. No exceptions. These are trying times, my brothers. The human infidels persist in resisting the might of the Covenant. Rest assured, this war, as some are calling it, will be over soon, to be forgotten and dismissed as an insignificant event in Covenant history. Part 1. Soren. Soren cursed his bad luck. After centuries of peace, a war had to break out in his lifetime. And this wasn't the kind of war the Covenant was used to, a rebellion or a species to be absorbed into their empire. The humans were smart, ruthless, and mighty warriors. Whilst they may use old technology, it was effective. Many a Covenant soldier had died at the hands of a crude human projectile. The High Council had realized the threat these humans posed to the Covenant, and so every battle-worthy Sangheili had been drafted into the Covenant. Soren missed the days as a scribe in the great library of high charity, a job usually reserved for the prophets. It had taken much study on his part to finally be accepted into the library, and now all this. Soren looked down at the plasma rifle he held within a long hand with disgust. He'd never fired a weapon in his life, never expressed a desire to do so, yet here he was now, garbed in the traditional blue armor of a Sangheili elite miner. He looked into a puddle at his feet, and was surprised by how warrior-like he looked. Then again, every Sangheili was like that. Even before the days of the Covenant, theirs had been a militaristic society. Little had changed. Soren looked every part the noble Sangheili he was supposed to be. A little over 8 foot tall, with narrow eyes and sharp teeth upon his mandibles. He resented that. He brought up a hand to admire the way his energy shield flared ever so slightly at the patter of heavy rainfall bounced off it. At least that was a bonus of being a Sangheili in this war. Soren mused as he looked over at a huddle of grunts, desperately trying to gather what little warmth they could from the small flickering fire. One grunt was getting a little too close to the flames. "Careful there," Soren called over. "Methane is a flammable gas, and your mask is a little close to that flame, Ungoy." The 5 tiny figures instantly all drew away from the fire, suddenly eyeing it as if it were a deadly predator. A few moments later, however, they shrugged and drew to the flame once again, in just as much of a precarious position as before. Soren sighed and turned away. He walked over to his superior, the Sangheili major, who had been observing the grunts with amusement. "You waste your words on them, my brother. Ungoy are notorious for being extremely dim-witted," the major remarked, crossing his arms smugly. "Perhaps, yet they are under our command, and we should strive to keep them safe, no matter how futile the endeavor may be," Soren replied, disliking the way the crimson-colored Sangheili talked about them as if they were dogs. The major cocked his head to one side and looked at Soren in an evaluating manner. "I don't think I've seen you around these parts, brother. Are you new?" the major asked, as if he personally knew every Sangheili which roamed the outpost, which Soren thought he probably did. "Yes, I'm new. Until a few weeks ago I was a scribe in the great library of high charity. Suddenly I'm drafted and sent out here. My name's Soren," he said, holding out a hand. The major looked uncertain for a moment, then grabbed Soren's hand in a firm grip and shook it once. "Zarn," the major said simply. Soren assumed it was the major's name. "So, the great library. You must not have seen much action there." It was a statement, not a question. Soren nodded in agreement. "That's right. I've never fired a weapon in my life. Never planned to." Zarn smiled. "Well then, we shall have to remedy that. We can't have the Ungoy outstripping you in combat. But for now, we shall eat and we shall talk. Now tell me, is high charity truly as wondrous as they claim it is? I've always wished to visit." Ah, it is truly a wondrous sight, Zahn. I'm not usually a very religious person. I believe in the great journey, don't get me wrong. To suggest otherwise would be blasphemy, but I prefer the solid facts my scrolls give me. Yet when I behold the Forerunner dreadnought in the morning as I walk through the holy city, it makes me want to get down on my knees and pray. Soren replied, eagerly, glad that they both had a point of interest. I was once going to embark upon a pilgrimage to high charity once. Only once, Zahn replied, staring into the Ungoy's fire in the distance. The rain echoed, distorting his words, but my father fell ill, and so I had to tend him back on Sangheili. He died soon after. The Covenant didn't give me much time to grieve, though, and I was called back into duty a day afterwards. Soren hesitated a moment, then placed a consoling hand upon Zahn's shoulder. I'm sorry for your loss, the Sangheili miner said. I too know what it's like to lose a family member to an illness. My dear sister, Forerunners preserve her soul, died but a year back. Zahn grunted and shook off his hand. Let us dispel these melancholy thoughts, brother. Come, we should eat. I hear the Kigyar have been cooking up a stew. I'd better be there to make sure an offensive Ungoy doesn't become part of it. Soren laughed at what he thought to be a joke, and followed after the Major. Zahn didn't laugh. Perhaps he wasn't joking after all.